of his own to lead the feedback. For the sake of the trust of Nova Scotians, would the minister take initiative to have the format of the Back to Balance tour evaluated by an independent marketing agency to ensure that the process that the minister used to obtain the data was accurate and unbiased?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Back to Balance process was an outstanding success, and when we started, Mr. Speaker, we really didn't know whether it was going to work or not, and we're so pleased that so many people participated because they have such a passionate interest for the future of this province. And Mr. Speaker, we knew we were onto something the very first day, not just because at the Legion in Whitney Pier, 130 people turned out 3 or 4 times our expectation, but because in the very first session at the Sydney Chamber of Commerce, they had their highest turnout in years, and they said they liked the format so much they were going to adopt it for all of their future meetings.
Order. The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, my question today is for the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, we've just heard how much the NDP government values consultation, and I know that when the Minister of Health was in opposition, she also was a big advocate for consultations with stakeholders. In fact, she recognized their role in helping to shape government policy and programs. But just last week, in response to a question on the development of a mental health strategy, the Minister said, and I will quote, and I'd be happy to table the article from the Herald, it says, "I'm not prepared to wait as Minister of Health until we have the perfect strategy developed before we take action. We already know there's some things that are needed," unquote. So my question to the Minister is, if you believe in public consultation, isn't it more effective to involve stakeholders early on in the development of a mental health strategy rather than waiting till after the fact?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Honourable Member for the question. Mr. Speaker, there are more than 20 studies that have been done on the mental health system in Nova Scotia over the past 12 to 15 years. We have a lot of information about areas where we need to take action, Mr. Speaker, and we will be doing some work in some of these areas as we're able to with respect to resources, Mr. Speaker. As for a mental health strategy, we committed to doing a mental health strategy in our speech from the throne, and Mr. Speaker, this will be very much a consultative process with stakeholders' involvement. But what I was meaning by the quote the Honourable Member referred to is, I'm not going to wait to act in the areas that we know require action until a strategy has been developed. Mr. Speaker, that could take as much as 12, 14, or 16 months, Mr. Speaker, and I'm not prepared to put off acting when we have to act. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park on your first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We also have reams of studies on the emergency health rooms, and yet we hired somebody to spend a year to go look at that, an expert for $100,000. So I'm not sure how that equates to our mental health strategy. But Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear the Minister say that she's looking at involvement of the experts. I believe the experts in this case are the frontline organizations that work with mental health and the families that represent and advocate for their family members. So what I'd like to ask the Minister is whether or not she agrees that to get strong universal buy-in to a new health strategy, we need to involve those experts, those frontline organizations from the beginning and not after the fact.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to assure the Honourable Member that all of the stakeholders will be involved in the development of the mental health strategy.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's well known that I personally and the members of this caucus take this very strongly, that we're looking for a mental health strategy and we believe we need it soon. We need action soon, as the minister said. But to make it useful in the long run, we need to have a group in place who can help ensure that it remains relevant, that it gets periodically fine-tuned, that it's evaluated on an ongoing basis, that it has some flexibility built in, and a council of mental health professionals and advocates could provide that flexibility. So my question to the minister is, the minister willing to stay true to her roots in consultation and appoint a council of mental health professionals and advocates who can provide the minister with advice from the front line?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we will be working with stakeholders around the province as we develop the mental health strategy with respect to governance in an ongoing way to monitor such a strategy as it's implemented. That's an issue that remains to be decided and something that would have to be discussed, I think, quite broadly through the process, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Hants West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question through you is for the Premier. Mr. Speaker, does his Chief of Staff, Dan O'Connor, work full-time for him, or is he working part-time for the Queen's visit? If he's working full-time for the Premier, will the Premier explain today why he's involved in informing the Chairman of the Board of the International Tattoo that the Queen would not be attending?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, my office is very much engaged in the question of how we can facilitate a warm reception for Her Majesty the Queen, and to ensure that she feels the warm regard that the people of Nova Scotia feel for her. Mr. Speaker, the decisions with respect to the itinerary for the Queen's visit will be decided by the Palace.
The honourable member for Hants West on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Premier has talked about the safety concerns expressed by the Tattoo's Artistic Director, retired Colonel Ian Fraser. But the Premier said last week in a television interview his office was not involved in the Queen's itinerary, yet his Chief of Staff is the one who informs the Tattoo's Board of Directors that she will not be appearing. Will the Premier explain that, please?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, as I've pointed out repeatedly, my office is involved in facilitating the visit of Her Majesty the Queen, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that her visit here is a successful one and that she is accorded the respect and regard that the people of Nova Scotia would expect. The decisions with respect to her itinerary is communicated to us. Of course, if there was information that we thought was relevant to others, that we would forward that on. But those decisions are made by the Queen's staff.
The honourable member for Hants West on your final supplementary.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, through you again to the Premier. I'm still not convinced, and nor are others, despite all the Premier's bluster today, that his office is not involved, especially when his Chief of Staff is phoning and informing the Tattoo Board. The Queen will not appear. On the CTV news earlier this week, Mr. Fraser said he was still hopeful something can be arranged to have the Queen attend the tattoo, providing safety concerns are met. If not, the people of Hants West would still like to see Her Majesty and our constituency, as we invited her to attend last December. So the question is, who is in charge here, the Premier or his Chief of Staff? Will one of them fix the situation for the Nova Scotia International Tattoo, or will our province continue to receive negative press around the world for this unnecessary interference?
The Honourable the Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've replied twice to this question. I don't think the member opposite has understood what I have said, that the decisions that are made with respect to the royal visit are done by the Queen and her staff. And the itinerary that is set out, of course, for security reasons, are...
Order, please. I remind the member from Cape Breton North that the Premier has the floor. Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The itinerary for the Queen, of course, is also a matter of security. They control the release of that information to finalize those decisions, and of course they will do it when it is appropriate.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Community Services. On February 24th, the Premier and the Minister announced a new program, the Target 100 program. The Minister has stated that the program is designed to recruit, train, and employ 100 Department of Community Services recipients over the next 2 to 3 years for jobs at co-op businesses around the province. My question to the Minister is, why would her department limit the program to 100 recipients when in the same press release, and I'll table that, Mr. Speaker, the Co-op Council said that over the next few years it will have hundreds of vacant positions to fill?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to thank the honourable member for his question because I know he cares about the people in the province. And what I'd like to explain is that this is a wonderful partnership. And so, as in any new partnership, we are exploring 100 targeted positions with the goal to go forward. We know and we can see that this is going to be a successful program, and we know that there's many other opportunities for hundreds more, but the initial goal is to reach 100 jobs. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, it was Diane Kelderman, Chief Executive Officer of the Council, who quoted, "It is a win-win for the co-ops looking for employees, a win for community services in its efforts to provide people in need with opportunities to become independent, and most importantly, a win for those who to find not just a job, but a career." My question to the Minister, Mr. Speaker, is how is her department going to communicate this opportunity to its recipients, and have all caseworkers been made aware of the full content of the program now?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly, it's very important to us. We have an open communication system within the department, so staff, all our staff know about the program, and especially the caseworkers that work with people on an individual basis. So they'll be able to identify those needs on those individual bases. And if they see an opportunity and they express to that individual that this program is available and there's an interest there, then we will work with that individual to go forward with the opportunity to work with Target 100.
The honourable member for Dartmouth North on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I applaud the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council for forming this partnership with the department. A partnership that will see its recipients earn salaries that will start from $10.50 an hour to $15 an hour. The question here, however, Mr. Speaker, is who really wins? And I don't believe it is the recipient when they will have 70% of the income clawed back. My question through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister is, when will her department, the NDP government, make changes to this policy of 70-30 clawback, one that only acts as a disincentive to employment, one that her government in opposition was so openly opposed to?
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
The Target 100 program is a fabulous program because there won't be a clawback for the fact that the individuals be working and receiving payment up to, some of the positions are up to $14, $15 an hour. So it creates a new opportunity for that individual and families. And we're also working on the ESIA redesign and be looking at all those particular policies, what I'm extremely excited about, and we'll be looking at those type of policies that the honourable member is referring to. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Natural Resources. Mr. Speaker, on February 17, the Minister of Natural Resources announced that the province had purchased 9,710 acres of land from Wagner Forest, Nova Scotia Limited. Mr. Speaker, I applaud the notion of securing coastline for public ownership. But the New Democrats have made a mockery of this announcement by agreeing that Wagner could clear-cut the land before the province hands them $9 million of taxpayer money. My question to the minister, why are you purchasing land for the purpose of preservation and allowing Wagner to decimate the forest at the same time?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question. Yeah, I would say that that on the face of it, it appears to be a contradiction. The facts, although I think would see it to be something quite positive. Nova Scotia has Nova Scotians actually own very little of their coastline, and as far as in terms of in government hands. So this is 22 kilometers of coastline on this parcel of land. This was an extremely high-value piece of property. I mean, actually, in regards to the question yesterday on the $300 for northern pulp land, this was $900 an acre for this land, and actually, which was a lower price than we were anticipating we'd have to pay. One of the concessions we made in order to get this piece of land was to allow them to harvest about 25% of it. I have to say that saved Nova Scotians about $1 million in the price of the land. We will be able to manage the forest as it grows back on that property, and it will. And this land will then belong to Nova Scotians for generations to come. And I have to say, as much as only about a quarter of it's cut down, as the member from Cape Breton South might listen. So, Mr. Speaker, we're pleased that we were able to acquire this piece of land at all. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kings West on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP are permitting Wagner to clear-cut using the most devastating type of forestry, whole tree harvesting. This type of harvesting almost always results in non-natural regeneration. By the minister's own admission, it will take 40 to 50 years to get some semblance of a forest back. For 6 years, we stood here, and we were in the House, hearing the NDP wage war against this very practice. My question to the minister, why are you sanctioning the destruction of this area in Cumberland County by allowing Wagner to use whole tree harvesting?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources, and I would ask that you keep your answer as reasonably brief as you can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm willing to give that a shot. For the member opposite, the whole tree harvesting would be on 500 acres of the 2,000 acres. I don't know what he means by unnatural regeneration. The fact that it's regeneration would mean it's natural. So and it will regenerate, Mr. Speaker, and the way that that forest develops will be under our control, Mr. Speaker, and the control of the people of Nova Scotia. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kings West on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With this government's argument, I wonder whether the minister also feels Nova Scotia Park should be clear-cut for a quick dollar, given that they too would grow back in 40 years or so. My question to the minister, when can we expect a provincial policy on whole tree harvesting in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, look, the member may not be aware, but in the agreement to allow NewPage to use Crown land for their proposed electrical generation that they have been pursuing, in order to get permission to use wood off their Crown lease for that purpose, Mr. Speaker, one of the conditions of that agreement was that they couldn't use whole tree harvesting. So that's the start of a policy, but until we finish our strategy review, I think there won't be any change across the province, and that those recommendations should be on my desk in about 2 weeks, I'm hoping. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is to the Premier. Rules around financial contributions to political parties during an election campaign are clear. All leaders, all political parties, and all Nova Scotians are aware of these rules. At the time when your party accepted a $45,000 political contribution from Mainland Building and Construction Trades Council, the rules stated, and I quote, "The total contributions by an individual or organization to each recognized party and all candidates and electoral district associations of that party must not exceed $5,000 in each calendar year." My question to the Premier is this: what was going on within your political party, your NDP party, with you as a leader, that this rule was not understood or respected?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the Chief Electoral Officer had a look at the incident described by the member, and what they found was that we did not and could not have known about the facts surrounding those donations.
The Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party on your first supplementary.
Thank you. Accepting contributions that violate this rule is seen by many as an attempt to undermine the fundamental marker of democracy. Breaking the election laws was illegal. The imposing of a fine of $10,000 was the maximum fine that could be imposed. Paying the fine was an admission of guilt. My question to the Premier is this: what do you have to say to Nova Scotians about your role as leader when these events occurred?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Chief Electoral Officer found that, of course, we did not and could not have known about the circumstances surrounding those. Mr. Speaker, my instructions when it came to the notice was, of course, to send those back immediately. I think those were unambiguous. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I checked to see whether or not they were sent back, told they were.
The Leader of the Progressive Conservative Party on your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The statute of limitations prevented HRM police from responding to the request for an investigation. Questions remain unanswered. What do you have to say as leader, Mr. Premier, within your party, and what have you said to your party to assure Nova Scotians that your party does understand the rules and that those rules will be respected in the future?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What we did, as the member opposite knows, is that we introduced legislation in this House to ban union and corporate donations. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, in last week's throne speech, there were a number of lines that related to emergency rooms, and they're all of great interest to Nova Scotians. I will quote from that document. It said that last September we had Dr. John Ross appointed as the province's first ever advisor on emergency care. Dr. Ross's report will help form the basis of the government's plan to ensure that families have access to emergency room care when they need it. And the Emergency Department Protection Fund will be used to fund specific initiatives in the plan. My question to the Minister is, will the Minister commit to using the $3 million protection fund to keep emergency rooms open 24/7 as she and her government promised in the 2009 election campaign?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Our government is very committed to ensuring that there is high-quality, safe, accessible emergency room services from one end of this province to the other, Mr. Speaker, and that is why we appointed Dr. John Ross, a very well-respected emergency room doctor, to be our advisor on emergency room care. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Ross will be reporting shortly his interim report. And Mr. Speaker, I think the honourable member and members of this House will view the findings in his report, his interim report, quite favourable, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park on your first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I didn't hear an answer from the minister about whether or not she would maintain the commitment made during the election just passed to keep those emergency rooms open 24/7. I think Nova Scotians had an expectation that we'd hear a yes from that, not waffling on that answer. Again, Mr. Speaker, we're expecting an interim report soon from Dr. Ross, and I would like to ask the minister if she can indicate to Nova Scotians the deadline that she has given Dr. Ross for the delivery of this interim report.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as the honourable member knows, Dr. Ross was appointed in September. He began his work. He has been around to many of the district health authorities. He has met with emergency room physicians. He has met with people in communities. His interim report will be available shortly, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very much looking forward to the kind of discussion that his interim report will no doubt generate here in this House and in the community, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Halifax Clayton Park on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. We all know that Dr. Ross has had extensive consultations with stakeholders, and some would say these consultations have resulted in some great community upheaval. So it's certainly well noted and marked that he is travelling the province. It seems to me the NDP government had all the answers during the election, and now they are really stymied and stuck, waiting for the cover that will come from this report from Dr. Ross. I'd like to ask the minister as my final question, if in the spirit of openness and transparency, will the minister commit to releasing Dr. Ross's report immediately upon receipt? Just yes or no, please, Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, Dr. Ross has had many things to do. He is putting the final touches on his report. He will be reporting fairly soon. I will be responding to that report as soon as I can, Mr. Speaker, and I know that the honourable member will be very constructive in the process of having discussions about how we move forward, Mr. Speaker, as she always is.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question through you is to the Premier. On September 15, 1773, the ship Hector landed just outside of Pictou after an arduous journey across the Atlantic.
He was on it.
Blown off course, the ship was long overdue. Food was running perilously low, and many of the passengers died of smallpox and dysentery during the 11-week voyage in the hull of a cargo ship. Well, Mr. Speaker, 237 years later, the ship Hector has been blown off course again. This time by a lack of government funding for this important tourist destination. Mr. Speaker, in the March 23, 2010 edition of the New Glasgow Evening News that I will table, the MLA for Pictou West stated that he wouldn't be raising issues from the floor, but that he had Cabinet colleagues and Premier Dexter to call on. Number one on his list was the good ship replica and development of the surrounding waterfront. Well, Mr. Speaker, I guess the MLA for Pictou West can count on the Premier and Cabinet to help him with his top priority for his constituency. My question to the Premier, will the Premier commit to going to Pictou to meet with the residents to explain why he decided to shut down this important tourist facility?
An interesting question. The Honourable the Premier.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I tend to think that the member for Pictou West does an excellent job of representing that constituency, making his views fully known. I should, Mr. Speaker, as you know, the community is having a difficult time balancing its financial priorities, as are many communities around the province, as are both the federal and provincial governments. And what we have said is that we are prepared to look at what we can do in the context of what other funding may be available in order to try and address this very difficult situation.
The honourable member for Victoria the Lakes on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, through you to the Premier. In 2002, the Hector Heritage Quay was the winner of the Attractions Canada Award. Not only does this venue directly employ 17 people in the small town of Pictou, it was a well-known destination attraction, bringing tourists to the area and to the local shops, restaurants and hotels. Like the Yarmouth Cat Ferry and the jail in Spring Hill, this is yet another example of how this government is turning its back on rural Nova Scotia. This is yet another ship sunk by the Dexter government. My question to the Premier, can you tell Nova Scotians now which rural town will be next to feel the wrath of this government's policies?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am assuming, of course, that is a rhetorical question because, in fact, Mr. Speaker, what we are looking to do is ensure we strengthen the economies of rural Nova Scotia from one end of the province to the other, and that's why we're making the important investments that we have made in Pictou County. That's why we've gone forward with the Northern Pulp announcement. That's why we've gone forward with the investment with Daewoo in the local economy. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work at strengthening the economy of rural Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Member for Victoria the Lakes and your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, through you to the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage. Ironic, isn't it? The ship Hector is not only an important tourist attraction in our province, it's also an important venue to learn about our province's Scottish culture and about the history of our ancestors who fought to come to our province. How did it come to this point? Considering all of this, Mr. Minister, how did you come to the decision to not fund the ship Hector and allow it to shut down?
The Honourable Minister of Tourism, Heritage and Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the member opposite, I'm pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, as you're well aware, we met with the officials from the area. They put a request forward to us. We did fund part of the consultation that they were seeking for. The purpose of the study that they were conducting was to determine what the next steps were. What we also did, Mr. Speaker, is we carried that forward to see if there was anything within the department that funding of the ship Hector would fall under in the terms of what we are able to fund. And unfortunately, sad to say, like so many other jurisdictions around the province of Nova Scotia, that just wasn't a fit.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. I imagine you weren't too happy with that last answer over there, but anyway. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Economic and Rural Development. Mr. Speaker, recently Rail America announced that if a subsidy doesn't continue for Cape Breton Railway, it will close this portion of the line. Mr. Speaker, today is the deadline, so I want to ask the Minister of Economic and Rural Development, will your government provide the $10 million subsidy Rail America is seeking?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to say that we are in serious negotiations and deliberations with Cape Breton Rail. They've been very cooperative. We find them very, very easy and willing to deal with. We have, even though the current contract does expire, we still have ample time to reach some sort of deal if a deal is to be met. So it's still ongoing.
Okay. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South on your first supplementary.
More consultation, I guess, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my first supplementary. Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt a subsidy to this rail line is essential to the economic development future of Cape Breton Island. However, assurances also must be made to Nova Scotians that Rail America will treat Cape Breton landowners properly. One of the big concerns in the area has been around the fees charged by Rail America to residents who live along the rail line. Mr. Speaker, another grant is necessary, but another grant without conditions will be a mistake. My question to the Minister, will you ensure provisions for landowners are made as part of any subsidy agreement with Rail America?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, we are in negotiations with Cape Breton Rail. Certainly, the Minister for Transportation Infrastructure Renewal will be part of that. Is part of that process. And as far as I'm concerned, conversations with Cape Breton Rail are going along very, very well. They are being very, very cooperative. And when the time comes, we will let everybody know, including the members here, what decisions have been reached and what agreements have been made.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South on your final supplementary.
I just hope that decision doesn't come, Mr. Speaker, after they're gone. You know, what we've heard from this minister in this session, and indeed in the last session, that he's been meeting with everybody in Nova Scotia. But there hasn't been any decisions made, and every time he meets with somebody, the end result is we can't do anything. You know, so I mean, and that goes for Yarmouth, it goes for Pictou, and now they're meeting with the rail authorities. Mr. Speaker, in February 2009, the current Premier reiterated his party's support to the landowners adjacent to the railway, and I have a copy of the letter from Darrell Dexter, who was then Leader of the Opposition, stating that he's continued support to the landowners. It is still the NDP position that if the railroad does not come forward with a rate structure that is fair to the property owners, then the minister should move forward and use the regulatory powers within the Railways Act to establish a structure of fees fair to everyone involved. The needs of the families must be treated fairly. Darrell Dexter, Leader of the Opposition. I will table that letter. And I would ask the Minister of Economic Development, in the spirit of what the now Premier and former Leader of the Opposition has said to the people of that line, will you protect the citizens of Cape Breton in any deal with Rail America?
Good question. The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with all due respect, the conversations that we are having with Cape Breton Rail, and I mean the cabinet conversations, will remain at the negotiating table, and it's not something we're going to negotiate under those parameters. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Argyll.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question through you is for the Premier. Mr. Speaker, the Premier continues to fail Nova Scotians, and his betrayal of the people of Southwest Nova, now Cape Breton, Cumberland, Pictou, has inflicted great economic harm to communities and working families who expected genuine leadership from the Dexter NDP. Mr. Speaker, will the Premier commit to meet with the people of Yarmouth, in Yarmouth, yes or no?
Here, here. The Honourable the Premier.
Well, of course, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to meet with the people of Yarmouth, as I am with the people in any of the communities around the province, and I can tell the member opposite that we intend to continue to work to strengthen the economy of rural Nova Scotia, as we are already, as we are attracting new companies to this province, new investment, new capital investment. That is the secret, Mr. Speaker, to having economic prosperity in this province, and we intend to continue to do it.
The Honourable Member for Argyll on your first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if he needs a little help, I'm more than happy to give him my per diem so he can come down to Yarmouth and visit with people from Yarmouth. Mr. Speaker, we have here that's supposed to be the man of the people. He's refusing to meet with the very people of whom he previously declared he was the champion. Yep. The unionized employees of Bay Ferries expected more than a pink slip and a slap in the face. Apparently, not all unions are created equal or treated equally. Apparently, the 189 union members don't get the same treatment as the Halifax union bosses. Mr. Speaker, will the Premier explain why the backroom union deals of Halifax don't extend to the rural reaches of the province?
The Honourable the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I treat all workers in this province with respect. And, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have met with the representatives of the workers with Bay Ferries. Mr. Speaker, in fact, I met with them.
Please. The Honourable Premier has the floor.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, I've met with them several times. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for the members opposite to understand that these decisions were not taken lightly. They were not taken without consultation. They were not taken without a thoughtful investigation of all of the facts surrounding this ferry. And the reality is that it was an unsustainable service. Now, Mr. Speaker, we're going to devote our efforts to trying to find an answer that's going to strengthen Southwest Nova Scotia. And unfortunately, that needed to be done years ago, and it simply wasn't.
The honourable member from Argyle on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, if it wouldn't have been for Friday, if it wouldn't have been for emergency debate, the Premier would never have spoken to anybody in that union, because luckily they came here to see what this government was going to answer. They didn't get any answers, but thankfully, and I thank the Premier for going up there and meeting with those people on that day. Didn't give him any answers, and I think he'll end up paying for that one. Mr. Speaker, the Premier's non-leadership, his Cabinet's inability to do the numbers, and his cowardice to refuse to meet with the people of Yarmouth in Yarmouth is proof positive that the Dexter NDP has a two-tiered governing policy, one for their backroom friends and one for the rest of Nova Scotia, who have not curried favour. Mr. Speaker, why doesn't the Premier just admit that he has failed the people of Yarmouth, or could he just stand up and show leadership by agreeing to meet with the people of Yarmouth in Yarmouth?
I'd remind the member to be very careful in your choice of words. I'll let it go this time, but be careful. The Honourable, the Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to respond to something that was said that was just fundamentally untrue. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to meet with representatives of the employees with Bay Ferries. As I've said, I've done it now on a number of times. Mr. Speaker, he asked me if I met with him. I have met with him. And Mr. Speaker, he asked the question, but he apparently doesn't want an answer. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that spending some $12 million in a subsidy for a service that was actually weakening the region rather than strengthening it was not our idea of something that should be, that was good for southwestern Nova Scotia. We want to make sure that we take that money and that we have the resources to be able to work to strengthen the economy in that part of the province.
Okay. The honourable member for Digby Annapolis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health, Promotion and Protection. For the past 2 months, members of the Lifeplex Wellness Centre in Cornwallis have been left in limbo as all parties involved develop a management plan to operate the facility. Mr. Speaker, the facility closed its doors to its paid membership on March the 20th, leaving 1,100 people without a facility to use. They have been left without a place to maintain and improve their health and well-being. So my question to the Minister is, what active role has staff in the Department of Health Promotion played to ensure these 1,100 members can access the Lifeplex Wellness Centre as soon as possible?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, the Office of Health Promotion and Protection are very much involved in helping recreational facilities around the province build good infrastructure and maintain the infrastructure. However, we are not involved in the day-to-day operational support for those recreational facilities. Mr. Speaker, those are responsibilities that fall to the municipal government and local communities, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we are not involved with the operation of that particular centre. However, we are aware of what is occurring, and we do know that there is a problem there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Digby Annapolis.
Well, Mr. Speaker, maybe the Department of Seniors could help out here, because it is seniors with a problem down there. Mr. Speaker, it may be months before an agreement is reached and with another operator. While no one can argue that a new operator would be beneficial in the community's best interest, it is clear that up to now, the province has been silent. Mr. Speaker, 80 seniors use the facility for their arthritis and the rehab classes. The door to their facility is now locked. Recently, a contract had been negotiated with the municipality so that a local swim club now has access to the facility for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. My question to the Minister of Health: would the minister be willing to direct her staff to meet with the municipality of Annapolis in order to develop a plan for these seniors so that they will be able to resume their arthritis and rehab classes?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, although I'm not the minister responsible for seniors, I am very interested in the health and well-being of seniors around the province, and I would be happy to speak with the honourable member following the question period today to get further information about the seniors program at that particular centre, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Digby Annapolis on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, here are the facts. A new facility remains idle. Members are unable to access it, and seniors' health is deteriorating as a result. The result is, Mr. Speaker, and I believe the minister would agree, we will likely pay more money as a result of worsening health of these seniors than it would cost to come up with some funds to allow them to resume their rehab classes. My question to the minister: is it possible for her department to free up some funds to allow seniors to access the facility for health reasons until such time as a new agreement is reached?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as I said, I would be more than happy to speak with the honourable member after the question period to learn more about the particular services that he's referring to for seniors in this particular facility.
The honourable member for Cumberland South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question through you is to the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
There you go, Bill.
Mr. Speaker, we've just become aware that many certified full-time employees to the Minister's Department have received their layoff notices. I wonder if the Minister could tell the House today how many across Nova Scotia are being laid off.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question. The specifics, of course, as we involve with the traditional layoffs at this time of the year remains a concern for all of us because we have many employees throughout the winter season who give us many long hours. And then, of course, we're in the soft season, as we call it, as I know the member opposite was the minister in the current position I'm in. And then, of course, we have the problem with the fact that, yes, we have work to be done, but we have no asphalt plants that are up and operating. I want to assure all members of the House that we're very carefully considering what has been called on numerous occasions by previous governments and by this minister too, as we're bridging the attempt to keep as many people as possible on in this time of the year. There are other factors, of course, when many of the men involved are going on to get for other jobs in the private sector. I myself have heard from members in my constituency concerned about this issue. I've heard from members of my backbenchers also brought it to my attention, and it's something that remains an ongoing concern. It's something we're going to try and improve in the future. It's an issue of real concern because these men and women provide quality service throughout the difficult seasons of the year. And now, as we go through these difficult months where they take a layoff, it is unfortunate. It is something that we're going to continue to address in a timely fashion.
The honourable member for Cumberland South on your first supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again through you to the minister. Over the last couple of years, the previous government was able to find additional dollars to ensure that we were able to keep those employees working for two reasons. One, obviously, was to get the much-needed work done. Second was to ensure that we kept valued employees here working instead of going out west or going on to other jobs. So it's very important for the department to keep those people working. Mr. Speaker, last year, when there was some indication through the media there could possibly be some layoffs in transportation, The then New Democratic transportation critic, who is now the baby minister for that transportation, said, and I'll quote, "It just doesn't make sense in this economic climate to be laying off regular workers when there's plenty of shovel-ready maintenance work to be done." Again, she repeated later that month that in these difficult times, it seems that keeping people employed, especially in rural Nova Scotia, would be a key goal of the government. Mr. Speaker, if that was true back then, why is it not true today?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Well, the framing the question is not appropriate in my opinion, Mr. Speaker, but I'm not going to comment upon that because I think the concern is we're concerned about these employees who work for us in our department. And I will be the first one to admit that I've met with some of these gentlemen, and it is disruptive, there is no doubt. We will be taking as many positive steps as possible to ensure that there is as few as possible people will be laid off in the Department of Transportation Infrastructure Renewal. It is difficult, there is no doubt, and I share the members' concern about this, as all members of the House have brought these individual cases to my attention. We're doing the best we can with the limited dollars we have, and we'll continue to do that.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland South and your final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for that answer. No question about it. Again, over the last couple of years, very difficult to find those dollars to keep those employees working. My request to the Minister today, on behalf of all those employees who have contacted my office and continue to call, will the Minister go back to his departments and determine whether there may be additional funding within the department or through Cabinet to ensure these very valuable employees, many who have been with the department for decades, and who are certified full-time people, not seasonal part-time people, certified full-time employees of the Department of Transportation and had been for a number of years. Will the Minister go back, talk to his officials department, talk to the Premier and Cabinet to see if additional dollars can be spent to keep these employees working, especially at this time of year?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and again, my thanks to the member for bringing this bringing this forward. I will assure that every member of this House that comes forward to me, as I've heard from members on this side of the floor who brought individual concerns to my attention, I welcome those particular answers to come forward. I encourage members of all parties to bring forward the concerns. It's those individual cases, because I will certainly agree with the fact that we have a number of valuable employees that are caught in this disruptive time each and every year. What can we learn from past experiences? We should make sure that we're putting the value of these employees first. So members on all sides of the House who have employees in that situation throughout the province, I encourage them to bring the names of those particular employees to my attention. We'll look at it the best we can, but again, as the member opposite knows, having been in this position before, it is a difficult time, particularly when it comes to dollars. I'm appreciative of what you're offering to us. I thank you for your time, and I want you to know, first and foremost, those valuable employees will be my top priority.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East. The Honourable Member for Dartmouth East. Order. The time for oral question period is ended. The Honourable Member for Cape Breton South.
Liberal Opposition Day business,
Liberal Opposition Leader.
Mr. Speaker, would you please call
House
Bill
Leader.
6?
House Leader. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Job yesterday, that's probably... Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to rise to speak to Bill 6, which the essence of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is transferring the Industrial Expansion Fund out of the Cabinet room and into the business arm of the government, which is Nova Scotia Business Inc. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying to you that the majority of these loans are being delivered with the best intention of trying to create some employment across our province. But the fact of the matter is, in this time when government is talking about being open and transparent, making sure that tax dollars are being spent in an appropriate way, the fact that they're being, the applications that are being put before them are being scrutinized for the business case, that it is important that we move it out of the secrecy of the Cabinet room and move it to the business arm of our province, making sure that the business case is being made for each and every one of these loans. The real challenge is, Mr. Speaker, no one knows how many people have actually applied to that fund. No one knows whether or not, what the parameters are around many of these deals.
And the fact that they're sitting around the cabinet table leaves with the impression that it's more of a political decision than it is a business case decision on why these loans are being delivered to the people of this province. Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Finance was on this side of the House on many occasions, he criticized that fund. He suggested that that fund was a slush fund for cabinet ministers to be able to curry favor with their voters, with party faithful. But interestingly enough, like so many things have happened when this party crossed to the other side of the House, they forgot what they said on this side. And now began to fall into the trap of the old practice. Leading up to the end of February, they deliver an additional $75 million to this fund, 175. We did. Yeah, you did, of course. It's interestingly enough, they tried so hard to distance themselves from the previous government, but they quickly started acting like them in a hurry. It is unfortunate for the taxpayers of Nova Scotia and the dollars that they deliver to the government of the day is not being treated with respect in an open and transparent way, that all of us get an opportunity to see that. One of the reasons why we've suggested, Mr. Speaker, that this money be shifted from the cabinet room to NSBI is because we believe every dollar that the government is spending should be put through a business case model. But I also have issue with NSBI, and I think as the minister, and I know he's interested in hearing this, as the minister seriously considers this piece of legislation to move that fund out of the cabinet room to NSBI, he also needs to make sure that the business arm of our province, of our government, is also open and transparent. The fact that in the last budget there was one line talking about the total budget for NSBI. It hasn't told us about the salaries of the people that are working there, hasn't told us about whether there are any bonuses being paid, hasn't told us what's been delivered on the investment we've made to NSBI. It's important that it becomes open and transparent. It's important that Nova Scotians get an opportunity to see how we are investing their money. Mr. Speaker, no one is questioning whether or not government should have the ability to be part of investing in our economy. As a matter of fact, I think every member on this side of the House has been encouraging this government to invest in the economy of southwestern Nova Scotia through supporting a ferry service for one more year, allowing us as a region to put together a solid business case and a new business model that will work in today's era. But what we want, and I think what Nova Scotians are looking for, is to make sure that those decisions are made in the light of day, that people get an opportunity to view those decisions and the reasons why they're being made, in some cases, Mr. Speaker, on why the decisions aren't being made. Why are some people being the chosen few and others are being denied? Is it on a poor business case model, or is it on voting pattern? And as long as we continue to leave those decisions in the cabinet room, there will always be those questions in the minds of Nova Scotians. Are we making those decisions based on the business case or the political case? And we believe, and I believe, that moving that fund into NSBI and the business model that's been applied by them with some success, albeit only in some parts of our province, but it would be a better fit to be guiding the decision-making that we're doing when it comes to the tax dollars in terms of investing in our economy. As I said to you a few minutes ago, through you, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, as you carefully look at this piece of legislation, it is important also to carefully look at the mandate of NSBI, the business arm of our government, to make sure that it is more open, more transparent, but also has the ability to respond to the needs of the small business owner in this province. Speaker, we provide tax credits for people who come in and create jobs in this province, and yet we do very little for the men and women who have been creating jobs in this province for generations through the tough times, have stayed with us, have helped build the economy of so many of our communities. They are the same people who are investing not only their dollars, but their time and their energy and their expertise into making sure that that rural Nova Scotia not only will stay alive, but will remain vibrant, and really an option for young people to come and stay and build a life for them and their family. But it is important, though, as we go through this process and this transition, that we are looking at every dollar that this government is spending in an open and transparent way. The idea that you are following the pattern of the previous government, of leaving it in the cabinet room, only to be seen by the chosen few who get an opportunity to sit around the cabinet table, is not good enough for Nova Scotians any longer. Nova Scotians have made a very clear, made it loud and clear that they believe the decisions that government make need to be made in the open. They need to be defended by government, because if you believe in the decision that you're making, then you can defend it. And you should defend it to all Nova Scotians. And we need to get an opportunity to see how those decisions are being made in an open, transparent, and public way. Mr. Speaker, with those few comments, I'll take my seat and listen to the debate.
Thank you. The Chair now recognizes the Honourable the Minister of Economic and Rural Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to hear the remarks and the comments by the leader of the Liberal Party. And I would say that there's some points that we can agree upon when you talk about government and transparency. I think certainly we are on the same page. I would like to respond further to Bill 6, an act to transfer industrial expansion funds from the Department of Economic and Rural Development to NSBI. The Industrial Expansion Fund, or IEF as it is more commonly known, is a valuable economic development tool to grow the economy of Nova Scotia. It complements tools used by other organizations such as NSBI and NovaCorp and others used from across government. The IEF helps businesses and productivity and innovation, business expansion and growth, and contributes to a prosperous and sustainable business climate for Nova Scotia. Investments made through the IEF generate valuable tax revenue and significant economic spin-offs for the province while helping companies compete in the global marketplace. Through the IEF and other tools, the Department of Economic and Rural Development is able to help protect jobs and support business to be more competitive and to be more sustainable. The IEF has considerable flexibility and provides financial support such as loans and guarantees when many traditional sources are reluctant to do so. It's important that government play an active role in maintaining and creating jobs, especially in a time of economic challenges. This means not only helping existing businesses succeed, but also attracting new businesses to the province of Nova Scotia. The IEF contributes to helping government keep its commitments to make life better for families and for the future generations, laying the groundwork for those to come. The department administers the IEF and is implementing measures to strengthen effective governance and transparency. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important, I'm going to repeat, is that the Department of Economic and Renewal is in the process of implementing measures to strengthen effective governance and transparency. All transactions through the IEF are publicly announced, and the department produces annual reports to demonstrate investments in all regions of the province, crossing all sectors. And with the permission of the House, I'd like to table that report. The government recently responded to the Economic Advisory Panel's suggestion to grow the economy in order to meet the serious fiscal challenges facing the province by increasing the capacity of the IEF by $75 million. This was done to respond to the needs of businesses from across the province. While the IEF and the government of Nova Scotia is creating good jobs and growing the economy, we are also making tough decisions as we face with the necessity of living within our means and getting back to balance. We must focus our efforts on sustainable business opportunities. Since June 2009, government has authorized 14 transactions for a total of $191 million through the IEF. These help create approximately 780 jobs and sustain 2,400 jobs. An independent study indicated that $2.9 million was returned for every $1 spent. The department and NSBI have a successful track record of partnership to create jobs and economic returns for the province of Nova Scotia. NSBI assists local companies and attracts new ones with payroll rebates, loans, and venture capital, while the IEF is focused on business development and assisting existing businesses with loans, incentives, and guarantees, which make a significant impact on the quality of life we as Nova Scotians enjoy. For instance, Montreal's Castle Hall, manager of hedge fund risk and due diligence, is expanding to Halifax with a payroll rebate from NSBI and a training and recruitment and investment incentive through the IEF. There are many other examples of these partnerships, such as with Register.com of Yarmouth, Professional Quality Assurance, Citco, Kane, Research in Motion, and that's just to name a few. NSBI and the IEF partner to attract and retain these successful businesses to Nova Scotia that have brought thousands of high-quality jobs with them and significant tax revenues. The province's IT, financial services, and aerospace and defense industry are thriving as a result of the great work of both NSBI and the Department of Economic and Rural Development. Investments in these sectors and others do not only strengthen our economy, but also help to keep our youth here and attract them back to live, work, play, and raise their families in our beautiful province. One of the most prosperous examples of this partnership is NSBI's successful attraction of Korea's DSME. They came to Nova Scotia to build and export wind turbines and blades from the former Trenton Works facility. Mr. Speaker, the Departments of Energy and Economic and Rural Development were able to build on this attraction by working to provide financial assistance in an equity agreement to bring this internationally successful company to Nova Scotia over other jurisdictions. This is a great example of NSBI and the IEF working together to bring valuable jobs back to a small community that has a great facility to offer. In the case, Mr. Speaker, in the case of DSME, some cultures and countries prefer to deal with governments rather than arm's-length agencies, and the IEF gives us the ability to do this. Perhaps one of the keys to the successes of NSBI and the IEF working closely together on different investments is partly through the co-location of our staff. The department has staff that are co-located with NSBI staff in 6 areas of the province: Bridgewater, Pictou, Port Hawkesbury, Sydney, Truro, and Windsor. The individuals at these offices are working together to ensure economic growth and development in those particular regions. Over a 6-year period ending March 2007, the IEF had a return of $2.89 on each dollar invested. There were 3,240 new and maintained jobs through the IEF for fiscal 2009-10 that represent all regions and sectors in the province. During the last fiscal year, NSBI's work with clients and partners resulted in up to 2,733 new and retained jobs and up to $180 million in payroll for Nova Scotians. Some great examples of investments made recently across the province through the IEF include Cape Breton, Sydney's Harbourside Commercial Park received assistance through the IEF to create a thriving new marine park that will expand and attract businesses and create jobs. In the capital region, Irving Halifax Shipyard received assistance to help create jobs, grow the economy, and to modernize and upgrade infrastructure to increase their competitiveness. And sustainable fish farming is a great story of an immigrant who settled outside of Windsor, bringing his water recirculation expertise to establish a unique state-of-the-art aquaculture company. This very, very unique business startup raises and grows out European sea bass. In addition, the $4.75 million loan announced today by Scamwood Limited will create greater effectiveness through newer, innovative equipment. This is more evidence of the effectiveness of the use of the IEF as an investment tool. Company chairman and co-owner Bob Thorne told us that they are thankful for this support from the province as it will enable the company to modernize. There are many other great stories. It is the world's leading designers such as LED roadway lighting. On that note, again, I will say in closing, there are certain things that I've heard the Liberal leader say that we certainly agree with, and there's certainly no argument from this minister or from this government when it comes to transparency and things around governments. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member opposite, that we are investigating this and we are looking at this, and there are changes that are coming very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the honourable member from Cumberland South.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to stand today and speak to Bill number 6, entitled An Act to Transfer Industrial Expansion Funds from the Department of Economic and Rural Development to Nova Scotia Business Incorporated. I'd like to start out by saying, Mr. Speaker, this bill was introduced by the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition, and while there may not be a lot of things that he and I will disagree on and haven't in the past, but I would have to say at this point, starting out, that I would have to say that I really believe that the Leader of the Official Opposition really underestimates the potential of the Industrial Expansion Fund. And I think it's as a result of not having the opportunity, I think, to have worked with it like many of us have over the years. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in a few moments. But, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that if a Liberal government were ever given the opportunity to do what the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition says, I believe it would cripple the cornerstone of the economy of Nova Scotia. Economic Development Department has a variety, as was indicated by the Minister, a variety of funding mechanisms in which they can perform valuable funding services. And the Industrial Expansion Fund is just one of those tools used by the Department of Economic and Rural Development. Through the Industrial Expansion Fund has been historically shown in this province. Companies can be helped with a lot of issues they deal with, particularly in these economic downturn times we've seen in the soaring Canadian dollar and very tight fiscal markets. Mr. Speaker, I know, and I think there's a very successful business person in my own area, John Bragg, who owns Oxford Frozen Foods. And Mr. Bragg, I believe in one way or another through his family, probably touched around 1,000 people in Cumberland County. And as Mr. Bragg has told me, and he would tell everyone, I'm sure the Minister maybe has had an opportunity to speak to him, if not, I'd encourage you when you get up that way to speak to him, as he would tell you, the banks in downtown Toronto want nothing to do with supporting rural Nova Scotia. And when they won't look at infrastructure, for example, in Oxford, if they won't look at supporting and providing infrastructure money for operating, for capital, who are businesses like that to turn to? And I think, Mr. Speaker, Dr. Ham, when he was Premier, anytime he'd come to Cumberland County, he'd always want me to try to arrange a meeting with Mr. Bragg, and he'd always tell me, you know, we should, as politicians and government, we should never, ever argue with success. And if there's a success story in Cumberland County, it's John Bragg. I think you would find that John Bragg over the years has dealt with various governments, has dealt with the Liberal government, has dealt with my government when we were there, and now I'm sure is dealing with the new Democratic government. And one thing you'll find about Mr. Bragg is that every commitment he makes in regards to his business and commitments of repayment of any funds or any commitment around funding that's provided to him through government programs such as we're talking about here today, he will meet every one of those commitments. He'll never miss a payment, and the province will be fully repaid what it loans plus money. The other thing about the Industrial Expansion Fund, Mr. Speaker, that everyone should know is that the Industrial Expansion Fund is not a pot of money that Cabinet just scoops up and sets aside and says, okay, let's line up and let's see who we can get this money in the hands of what business province we can do. The monies that's set aside in the Industrial Expansion Fund is actually the opportunity for the minister, with the blessing of Cabinet, to borrow. When I was there, we increased that amount to $175 million, and I know that this government's now working on a new plan. The ability for the department to access up to $175 million when I was there through the Industrial Expansion Fund. And companies and business would approach the department, obviously NSBI first, and or the Department of Economic and Rural Development, and apply for funds through programs from that specific fund. Now, the Leader of the Official Opposition mentioned earlier about the way that the money is handed out and how it's done behind closed doors, and how he would support it, if there was a sound business case. Well, I want the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition to know that each and every time that a company applies for funds under that money under that fund, there is a strong business case developed each and every time. So just to answer that concern that the Leader of the Official Opposition has, there is a business case. There are people in the department who have been there for many, many years. I'm going to use Marvin Robart as an example. Been with the department 25 plus years. And Marvin Robart would do a thorough analysis of every business case brought forward, every request brought forward by a business to the department, and then in turn, as a result of that request and his thorough investigation, he would make a recommendation to the minister as to whether he believed or not it was a good investment for the province, and whether he would recommend that minister take it to Cabinet. Now, you know, Mr. Robart, being a credible individual he is, dedicated person, and I can tell you that, I know I was home myself when I was a minister and received a call from him late on a Saturday night. The man was in the office trying to work on a file he knew was very important in the province, was going to create jobs, and here he was in the department working to ensure that Cabinet the following week would have the proper information it needed to make the right decision. And I can assure this House that Mr. Robart and his colleagues who work in the department would never sign his name to a document, make a recommendation to the now minister to take to Cabinet, unless he believed in his heart from his experience that it was a good investment for the province. So I think there's a perception out there that the IEF is a political slush fund, and I've heard it said many times that government or cabinets will use it to their own advantage, and that is about the farthest thing from the truth that I've heard ever in this House. The IEF is just another tool that the minister has at his disposal through his department to assist business in Nova Scotia. Now, we always, there used to be a gentleman with the department years ago, and he's retired now. His name was David Lake. David told me that, governments, we're always trying to create opportunities and bring more jobs in Nova Scotia. But he always said as well, it's a lot easier to protect a job than it is to create one. And if you look around this province over the last 10 years, and you look at businesses that have for whatever reason, have folded up and left this province or closed their business, I think if the right tools are in place, it's easier to protect those jobs and try to keep them going than it is to try to attract a new business coming to the province. Now, just a note on NSBI. NSBI has done a tremendous job over the last number of years, and I'm not for one moment saying that they haven't. They're great on the world stage. They've brought many jobs to this province that are in the financial sector, the insurance sector. They've gone to places like Bermuda and attracted companies that probably otherwise we would not have been able to attract as a province. So I see a role for NSBI in that regard. But I believe there always has been, and there is now, and I believe there will be in the future, a strong role for the Industrial Expansion Fund under the Department of Economic Development. Mr. Speaker, Just a bit. I know the minister just cited some stats, but I think that some of them really deserve to be repeated, just to ensure that that members really appreciate what the Industrial Expansion Fund has done over the last number of years. And as he mentioned, an analysis was done in 2007 by Collins Management Consultants, and it showed that the results of that study showed that the IEF created or maintained 11,000 full-time jobs during a 6-year period, which ended in 2007. Now, you know, we've heard over the last couple of days some discussion about monies that were used to create jobs in Nova Scotia. And by the way, I want to go on the record to say that, you know, I've said here before that, you know, I'll be very critical when I believe the government's made a mistake or done wrong, whether it's the correctional centre in my own area or the Cat Ferry or the Hector and Pictou. I mean, that's our job here to point out where we think there are shortcomings. But I'll also, Mr. Speaker, given the opportunity when I think the government's done something right, applaud that decision and hope that they will continue to make those right decisions in other communities. The Industrial Expansion Fund, I believe, the announcements that the minister's made over the last while, I think were absolutely the right decisions to make. A lot of these are in rural Nova Scotia that without the fund, and if the minister would think about this, he said that they're looking at now, possibly some changes. I just hope the minister will keep in mind that some of the announcements he made since becoming minister last June, if changes are so that those decisions are outside of his ability to decide or to recommend the cabinet, or outside of cabinet's ability to decide on, a lot of those jobs that were either protected or created over the last year may not be here. So I hope that the minister and the cabinet understand that, you know, that the IEF is very important to maintain. It's a useful tool that's been used for decades in this province. And Mr. Speaker, you know, I think the banks across this country, especially in the U.S., the failure rates we've seen over the last number of years when it comes to loaning of monies is very high. I believe that number is right. The Industrial Expansion Fund, I think, traditionally over the last decades it's been in place. I think it's probably been 40 years. I think the average loss under that fund is about 6%. 6%. I would suggest that any bank in this country would love to be able to loan money to businesses like that Industrial Expansion Fund does and have a failure rate of only 6%. Very, very low. Mr. Speaker, how much more time do I have?
10 seconds.
5 seconds. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll just wind up by saying that I think the Industrial Expansion Fund is a tremendous fund. I hope the minister maintains the ability to use it to help Nova Scotian companies and maintain jobs here. And I want to give particular praise to the many staff, public servants that work over that at the Department of Economic and Rural Development for the great job they do in Nova Scotia. Thank you.
Thank you. The honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've really enjoyed the discussion on Bill 6, a bill to transfer the Industrial Expansion Fund to Nova Scotia Business Inc. Over the years, the Industrial Expansion Fund has provided funding for many companies, as has Nova Scotia Inc. under the programs that they do. But I feel that, as my leader does and as our party does, that the two of them, if they were merged, would actually be a lot more efficient. And indeed, remove the perception, whether it's real or not, that it's money given out on political basis. And I would suggest that probably sometimes that would happen and sometimes it wouldn't. But I just want to look at a couple of the things here that sort of glare out at you. And I'm not against supporting new jobs and business in the province. Far from that, it's just the opposite. But you look at Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering in Trenton, a place that definitely needs a lot of employment. And if you look at a company the size of Daewoo and they come to Canada to build turbine towers and turbine blades, and this is something that really should be provided and built in Canada. I think that's wonderful. I think the location is great where the Trenton works are. However, I question the amount of money that the province and the federal government put into this program as compared to the company, because when it seems a little bit disproportionate. For instance, the province, through all the money they've put into it and through everything run together, including in an equity position, there's $60 million. $60 million. The federal government come up with $10 million, and the company come up with $20 million. That's just a little bit over 20% investment from a company. That's not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal if you can get it from anybody. But hopefully, we've seen so many disasters in Nova Scotia over the years where companies come in have a very rich loan or a grant or whatever you want to call it, or forgivable loan from the province, and bang, when they run out of work or they run out of good management or whatever the case may be, they're gone and the money is gone, and we're on the hook and create our deficit even further. And the minister says around just under $3 return on investment for every dollar that the Industrial Expansion Fund puts in. That's a fair return, but if we would work with probably some smaller companies that export, the return is $7 for every one every dollar you export outside the country. So I think that the department wants to really look at their math a little bit better and see indeed where the best investments would be. Now, the only list I have seen on this, on the money that's been invested, around $170 million, is, and I haven't done the math on this to see if it all adds up. I don't think it does here, except Daewoo is 60 million of that. It appears there's only been 13 companies that they've listed so far, and I know the minister listed off many other companies. I definitely would like to get that list and see who all those companies were, more details on exactly how many jobs that they produced and did indeed improve in the province. But we're talking about efficiency here. We have field workers out there through economic development and Nova Scotia Business Inc. We have RDAs out there. And the thing is, if we could put this all together under one operation through such as Nova Scotia Business Inc., as this bill suggests, and make this, as the government says, open and transparent. I mean, let's be open and transparent. Let's provide more details on these things. But at the still time, you can still protect the identity and not so the identity, but the business ability of companies that need to get this thing that won't affect their competitiveness in the open market. But when you look at some of these things, the question asked that I see here, if you support, for instance, the Daewoo shipyards to the tune of $70 million worth of funding, which is, well, we'll see how that works out. But I'm interested in seeing the Competition Bureau and the free trade agreement if they decide they're going to export these products into the U.S. They might be tagged as a government-sponsored operation, and if they are, they'll be hit with tariffs. And if that happens, will this deal fall apart? Will it continue? And what happens if it does fall apart? Hopefully there's enough market in Canada for wind turbines and towers that they can indeed put many people to work here and ensure their operation. Or if they can ship these products to other parts of Europe, or which we're way behind with Europe now with that sort of technology, and ship it to Europe or ship it to some other countries, indeed will be very positive. But it's skeptical. You see so many of these things come forward, and you see the lack of transparency. And loans are given, and it makes you wonder. And the minister clearly said in his statement that the money was made available and no one else would give it. No one else. And I wonder how much difficulty Irving Shipyards would have getting $20 million from anybody. Very solid company, one of the strongest companies in the Maritimes, and indeed probably one of the strongest companies in Canada. And a $20 million loan wouldn't be a very big deal. Now, I've got no objection with if they made a good business case to Irving getting a $20 million loan to modernize and upgrade their infrastructure to increase their competitiveness. I have no issue with that at all. But indeed, could they have got the money somewhere else? And if they did they get the loan from the province because the terms were better, the interest rate was better, and at the same time we add that to our debt, and we have to pay interest on that ourselves. So are we really getting the money back and the return back that the minister indicated that we are? I'd be interested in seeing those numbers if they really do work. And as you go through this whole thing, there's some medium-sized and some reasonably small companies here that did get help, and in some areas of the province it probably made a lot of sense to do that. But again, this could easily be used and transmitted through the Nova Scotia Business Inc. and make it more transparent and allow them the opportunity to do a best business case And in some cases, I can remember we were in this legislature, loans, forgivable loans that were given out to Magic Valley. And I read the business plan that they had there. It was the exact same business plan they had 10 years before that, and they were turned down for. Nova Scotia Business Inc. even turned them down. But again, I believe it was the Industrial Expansion Fund supplied them with funding. I have no idea to this day whether the forgivable loans really made any difference in the company or not. Hopefully it did. Hopefully it did employ a few people, so we did get a little bit of return on our investment. So not all these have been, it's not all as rosy as been the opposition, the third party has said. It's not all as rosy as the government has said. There's some of these things that definitely don't work as well as they could be. Now, when you get a part of government, arm's length operation of government saying, no, we're not going to loan money to someone like Magic Valley, and then the government comes along and says, oh, yes, we are, it's a good investment, and then they make a forgivable loan. That's a grant. Any other way to put it, it's a grant. So it's no interest, no return, and from the business plans that I reviewed at the time, it was the exact same business plan was refused 10 or 20 years earlier, I mean. And they just rewrote it, put it back in, and got the money this time. So it really has to be some transparency with this. There has to be accountability with this. We have to see good business plans that come forward from the businesses to ensure that indeed it is a good investment for Nova Scotians. The government is talking about increasing the HST. That's going to make it Nova Scotia companies less competitive. It's going to give Nova Scotians less money that they're going to have to spend on products in Nova Scotia. It will hurt the economy. So does that mean that the Industrial Expansion Fund is going to have to bail some of these companies out? And usually when you bail a company out, unless they restructure and organize better and better management, it doesn't help. What happens is they get deeper and deeper and deeper, and they get to the point that it doesn't make sense to operate anymore. And again, the investment is gone and it's all over with, and unfortunately, the taxpayers at the end of the day paying the bill. And the bill doesn't go away. The bill's added to her debt, and her debt grows and grows and grows. The interest on that grows, and it's to the point pretty well that Nova Scotia, I think, if the debt is projected the way they say it's going to be, and the deficit that this government has decided to move forward instead of making tough decisions and doing the things that they should be doing, they're going to tax Nova Scotia's business out of business. Thank you.
Thank you. The time allotted for debate on Bill number 6 has now expired. Chair now recognizes the Honourable House Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, would you please call Resolution 4?
Resolution number 4. The Honourable Member from Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and pleased to join a number of members of the opposition and government to speak about the loss of the ferry de Cat serving Maine to Yarmouth. December the 18th was a black day in southwestern Nova Scotia. It was a day that is still reverberating in that area in particular, but actually through the whole tourist industry of our province. In fact, just in the last hours, the people working at the colony in Yarmouth have been given their layoff notices for the end of May. They're going to close the colony, which is, of course, you know, a arm of the yes, an institution, right? They're going to make it into an institution. But for Rod's Hotel, it was part of their enterprise in Yarmouth. And this is what is going to take place in a ripple effect across southwestern Nova Scotia. We'll see a number of bed and breakfasts where over 50% of their visitors came to Nova Scotia by way of the Cat, down the French shore and the South Shore. And we're going to hear more stories like what's happened to the colony in the coming weeks and coming months. When a community hears from as far away as Joggins and the Inverary in Bedeck that this will have an impact on them, we know that something devastating has taken place. And when I first heard of it, what I was shocked by was, of course, the Merry Christmas on December the 18th. You've just lost these amount of direct jobs and 400 to 500 indirect jobs from the loss of the cat. What I could not understand was why not a transition of 1 year? Let Bay Ferries know that we cannot continue with the cat. Now, there are many Scandinavian, a number of Scandinavian countries, European countries that had fast ferries, and they got rid of them when a barrel of oil reached $100. But they made a transition period in order to get a single hull ferry back in service. And this is exactly where the NDP truly missed the boat, was provide a transition year to Yarmouth, to southwestern Nova Scotia, and indeed all the province to have a year of adjustment. And you would have seen at least a couple of business proposals, and hopefully we will still see them. Because once you abandon a service for 1 year, a service that I believe has been going since about 1840, and once you change that pattern, it takes some time to recapture and recoup those businesses that are related to an important link. In 2005, when Scotia Prince came out of service, it took a number of years to recapture some of the business lost. And the same thing will happen here for sure. In fact, the tourism department, and I was at a meeting in Cornwallis just a couple of weeks ago, and the tourism department and all those involved with tourism, destination Southwest Nova, are scrambling to let people in the U.S. states know that there's actually another way to get to Nova Scotia. That's how fundamental an interruption for some people who've always relied and who base their vacations on coming across to Yarmouth. So when we change patterns like this, it's not 1 year, it'll be several years that tourism and Yarmouth in particular will be impacted. I know down through the valley, there are a tremendous number of our old heritage homes that have been turned into bed and breakfasts. And in chatting with a number of those owners, they know that this summer they will be impacted. And many, will have just one employee addition instead of two. In the same way for the Oaklawn Zoo, the Aviation Museum in our area, who track how people come into Nova Scotia, realize that they will have less visitors to those very, very strong tourist attractions this particular summer. So it is this the loss of the service. It's the change in the pattern of getting to southwestern Nova Scotia that will have long-term and long-range impacts in this part of Nova Scotia. There was another way to handle this situation, and most will agree that the CAT itself, that type of fast ferry, was not viable, was not sustainable, but that a single hull ferry with some transportation in addition to passenger service was the way to go. That's what should have been investigated before terminating that vital link into Yarmouth. So this will be a very difficult summer for the people who rely upon tourism in southwestern Nova Scotia. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I take my place.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the Honourable Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, First, let me confirm this government's commitment to make life better for families in every region of Nova Scotia. I also want to state my concern that we are doing a disservice to the strong and talented people of the Southwest region by continuing to emphasize the loss of the ferry rather than talking about the tremendous successes and assets of the region. Mr. Speaker, I am speaking about successes like TriStar that exports its ground ambulances from Yarmouth to 42 countries around the world. Mr. Speaker, we applaud companies like JHS Fish Products of Iceland, now located in the community of Tuscan. It is using technology and innovations thinking to develop dried fish products for markets in Nigeria and elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, we celebrate Zona Games, first place winners in the Nova Corps I-3 competition. Another great moment for Yarmouth is the recent announcement of the re-established air service from Yarmouth to Portland. Mr. Speaker, there are more successes from a tourism perspective. Recently, tourism staff were contacted by the owner of Trout Point Lodge. The company is exploring the possibility of attracting another air service to the Yarmouth area. While it is too early to comment on the viability of that idea, more discussion will be taking place in the coming weeks between the department and Mr. Parrott. Since 2007, the Department of Tourism, Culture and Heritage has invested almost $400,000 in development and marketing projects in Yarmouth and the Acadian Shores. It is working with industry members and municipal officials to explore even more new opportunities. We are working with our strengths and looking forward. We have mobilized a team, Team West, to include representatives from the Departments of Economic and Rural Development, Tourism, Culture and Heritage, NSBI, together with federal and provincial partners. The team will mobilize and discuss the issues and opportunities facing Southwest Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to share with you today that government is prepared to investing $600,000 to support the important work of this multi-stake player team. What's important, Mr. Speaker, this is not new money. I want to confirm that this government is working hard to live within its means while at the same time supporting economic growth and good jobs for Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, Bay Ferries Yarmouth proposed a reduction to the $3 million committed by the previous government. As you may recall, this $3 million was to help the company cover its debt servicing and maintenance costs associated with the boat until a new use for the CAT was determined. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to accept Bay Ferries' proposal by providing them with $2.4 million now. The company will be in much better position to be able to identify a new use for the CAT. Mr. Speaker, we felt it was important to the people of Yarmouth that we reallocate the savings from this agreement to help spur tourism and economic development in Yarmouth and its neighboring communities. With the resources in place to help this team do its work, we will see that the area's entrepreneurial spirit and successes with partnerships will come together to lead the way to renewed opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I accept the work of this team will be informed by the results of a transportation study for the Southwest region. Funded by ACOA, this study involves a number of provincial government departments and businesses and community stakeholders. It also involves the Federal Transport Department and representatives from the province of New Brunswick. The Government Steering Committee for this study will receive the final draft report shortly for its review and feedback. ACOA has indicated that this study will be made public within the next month. Mr. Speaker, by focusing on our assets and diversifying our economy, we will attract new jobs, newcomers, and build a more sustainable future for all Nova Scotians. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the honourable member for Argyle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Very pleased to stand tonight and talk to this issue once again. Mr. Speaker, I'm appalled at the minister standing today and reading the exact same speech that he read yesterday. There's not even a word that he changed. It's the same speech. So why doesn't he just package it up, put it on the website so people can see it, and just say, refer to the podcast. Refer to the podcast. Because, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't want to come to the point that there are people affected by this decision. He says we need to move on. Well, they didn't give him a good answer of why this happened in the first place. And if I have any suggestion at all, any suggestion of what to do with the CAT today, it's still sitting there in Yarmouth. You just gave them $2.4 million. Why don't you all load on it and go for a long ride and don't come back? Because Nova Scotians don't want to see you guys running this province. If this is the kind of leadership that you're going to be giving, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Mr. Speaker, I think all of you thought, by talking to the people in Yarmouth, the NDP people in Yarmouth, the Ken Langels, the David Oleys, those kinds of people, that this would just blow over. This would just blow over. Yeah. You know, Yarmouth won't say anything. They're a bunch of pushovers. So you can give it to us and we'll take it.
None of them
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, they don't have the guts. The minister hasn't had the guts to come down to Yarmouth. The Premier hasn't had the guts to come down here to address the issue. Why? Why did you make the decision? Mr. Speaker, we've been asking for the numbers. What has been the economic impact statement? What did you look at to make this decision? You said, we looked at this long and hard, and we made a very tough decision. Yet, when we asked the question, yesterday the Premier stood in his seat and he said that it cost him $400 for every person that walked off the boat. $400. Where the heck did he come with that number? Where did that number? He pulled that one out of his hat. Mr. Speaker, if I try to do the math, let's do math 101. Let's try to do a simple addition here. Mr. Speaker, it says the cost per person since 1997. If we look at 1997, and that's when Bay Ferries took over the system, okay? Took it over from Marine Atlantic. Since 1997, it cost somewhere close to $14. There was 3.5 million people that came through the Port of Yarmouth on the ferry system. Now, Mr. Speaker, okay, fine. Let's take that equation and stretch it out just a little bit longer. Let's look at the CAT. And let's look at the CAT since 1997. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that that number, from 2006 to 2009, there were 385,000 people that came across on the CAT. 385,000 people. Nothing to turn your nose at. So 385,500 at a $20 million subsidy. Well, I get $52.27 per person. Where did the Premier come up with $400? That is what I was afraid of. I was afraid that they didn't have all the facts. Mr. Speaker, I was afraid that they didn't do their work. I was afraid that they didn't do their due diligence. And Mr. Speaker, the statement from the Premier basically told Nova Scotians that they didn't do the work, that they were rash. They listened to the wrong people. They listened to the wrong people. Mr. Speaker, I want the Premier and I want the Minister to come and talk to my friend, Calvin D'Entremont. Calvin D'Entremont, who runs By the Sea Tours, who, by the way, just bought a new bus last year so that he could take the people off of the boat and show him the Acadian Village, the Acadian Museum, and all the areas through Argyle into Yarmouth. What's he going to do this year? You know, he's pretty sure he's going to have to go and sell the bus. So if maybe the minister has a purchaser for his bus, that's how you're going to be able to help out my friend Calvin D'Entremont. Yesterday, I brought Esther and Gil Dares. Mr. Speaker, I could talk about the marshalling company that does it, Ginger McKenzie and McKenzie Security. They don't know what to do with all their people, what to actually tell them.
Thrown to the curb.
You know, so they say we want to move on. All right, let's move on a little bit. You know, what can the minister do for Southwest Nova Scotia? And he talks about the $600,000 that he was able to glean from the agreement with Bay Ferries by doing a full payout. Well, God darn it, he could have paid out the full $3 million with the support of the municipalities and actually had a boat running.
Yeah.
What kind of math is that?
Yeah.
What kind of investment is that in the future of Nova Scotia? I welcome the fact that they are participating in Team West. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is an ACOA-led initiative, one that was announced by MP Greg Kerr on Friday, and I'm very glad to see that the minister was paying attention and that he is going to pay further attention by putting some dollars into this process. Mr. Speaker, I also said on Friday when I was speaking to the emergency debate, and I said that he needs to come with at least $1 million to try to keep the companies in Southwest Nova Scotia, in Argyll, in Yarmouth, in your riding, Mr. Speaker, of Clare, in Shelburne, in Queens, in Lunenburg, in Halifax, all through the valley, and let's talk about Cape Breton and everywhere else that right now are going to have trouble making ends meet because this government has made such a very short-sighted decision on not funding the CAT. Now, Mr. Speaker, again, they throw things like JHS Fisheries. Thank you very much for bringing in a handful of jobs. Thank you very much for the work that you're going to do with Register.com. Thank you for the work that you're going to do in the future to bring what I hope to see a handful of jobs here and there. It will not make the 500 jobs that have been lost today. Mr. Speaker, there are 500 jobs, and there's going to be infrastructure loss. Mr. Speaker, the infrastructure loss is the one, again, that really will concern me. We're talking about the Rod Colony Inn. Of course, Rod Hotels, in order to make ends meet in Yarmouth, I mean, they have 2 facilities. They're going to have to close one down. Mr. Speaker, they're going to have to invest heavily in the other one. What's going to happen to that? We're going to lose the colony. I mean, how many Nova Scotians have been to the colony? They've been to a lot because they have probably the best chowder available in Southwest. You know, we do have lots of good restaurants as well, but the colony is second to none. Mr. Speaker, what's Gail going to do? My cousin Gail D'Entremont, who's been a cook there for the last 20 years, where's she going to find work after this? Where is the wait staff? Where is the house cleaning staff? You know,
don't care about them.
Those people were probably working on probably minimum wage anyway, and here they are now thrown to the wolves.
Taking that wood and
you know, Mr. Speaker, those are the people. That's why I will continue to bring this issue forward, and I'm hoping that the Speaker, the member for Clare, will be bringing this issue forward on a regular basis as well, and I hope the member for Kings West will be bringing this forward as well, and I hope my colleagues will continue to bring this up as well, because we will. This is an issue that is very important to Nova Scotia. It is not one that can be brushed under the carpet and hope that it never comes again. Southwest Nova Scotia feels like it was thrown under the bus, and Mr. Speaker, they've got to fix it, and they better fix it for 2011. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to join the debate on the cat fair. You know, the cat didn't even get its whole 9 lives out of this government before they threw it under the bus. So, the interesting when you look into this and you start looking at the reaction and you start looking at some of the implications that the government has suggested over the past while that turn out to be false. You know, we've heard the members of the third party note that the numbers were wrong. You know, that the cost that the Premier suggested yesterday do not match up with the numbers that they were given by the government. You know, you can go on and look at the newspapers in Portland, Maine, who indicate that the first they heard of it was after it was cancelled and that they were a bit disappointed that they were never actually approached. Now, so, you know, you're looking for partners and they're quoted right there. Yet the Premier feels that they were feels that operators were consulted, and I'm sure if they were, then especially the town of Portland or the city of Portland would have heard about it before as well. We have not only Yarmouth, but we have the municipality of Queens and the municipality of Kings, both passing motions opposing the government decision. Those are very easily accessible, and a quick search of most of the top tourism sites, tourism websites and tourism writers across the United States shows them pretty well unanimously condemning the provincial government for this decision. So, you know, if the goal of the NDP was to get some media attention for Nova Scotia and the U.S. from this, they certainly did that. Unfortunately, the media attention that they got, when you read the when you read the comments on places like the Wooden Boat Forum, or need my glasses so I can actually see what I've written here, the Wooden Boat Forum, or the Portland Press Herald, or Travels with Hillary, some of the top tourism sites, what do they say? Their comment in all of them is Nova Scotia is now much more difficult to reach as an American tourist. That's exactly the message that we want to get out in the United States. See, and this is the problem. And you know, my colleague here a few minutes ago was quite right when he suggested that, you know, I think everybody pretty much agrees that the cat was the wrong boat. You know, we heard one of the NDP members from Halifax yell that out during question period earlier today. You know, and the thing is that that's not, people aren't saying it was the right boat. People are saying, whoa, you know, you gave us no notice about this. You dropped this on us without any time to come up with an alternative plan. And anybody in marketing, you know, the member for Inverness talked about marketing earlier, and anybody in marketing can tell you that once you lose customers, even if customers are down with the economy, it is much harder to get them back. So if you had given them notice, allowed people working with the government to find an alternative solution for next year's season, then you could have kept those customers. Well, now you have created a situation where, you know, the Portland Herald and other newspapers, the North American Travel Writers Association, are saying Nova Scotia is now much harder to reach. Do you know how hard it is to turn that perception around? It is very difficult, maybe impossible, and that's where it's going to have the impact. I mean, you know, let's not pretend that this impact is just in Yarmouth or even just as far as places like White Point, which has expressed concern. There'll be an impact here in HRM as well. You know, maybe it's not as many rooms at the Inn on the Lake in the Minister's Riding as it is at the Rod Colony. But there are still people that come through Nova Scotia on their travels, starting or ending their trip often on a ferry service out of Yarmouth to make that decision. You know, if the government truly could stand by and say, we have all the correct information, they would have tabled this information in the House, they would have provided this information publicly, all the information that they used to make this decision, they would have passed that on and made that public at the time of the decision, but they haven't done it. And that just suggests that the government is hiding something, or that there is information that it does not want the public to see that it came to in making the decision. They've had months now to release that information, to release all the information that they used. And in fact, it took, they didn't even, it would appear from comments by ministers in the media at the time, they didn't even know there was a penalty clause when they made the decision. So, you know, let's have every bit of information that Cabinet used to make that decision, because the decision's been made by Cabinet. So there's no need for Cabinet confidentiality on any of those documents now. Let's have all of those briefing documents released, and released now, so that the people of Yarmouth can see them, the people of Nova Scotia can see them, and the people of this House can see them and have the same information, because clearly the information that we are receiving from operators, from government departments is different than what the ministers are saying in public. And so, you know, there has to be some clarity on that, and there has to be a reckoning of those numbers. You know, in haste this afternoon, you know, you can tell that the minister was feeling some heat on this issue, because what did we see this afternoon? But, well, not only did he read the same speech as yesterday, and you know, which baffles me. I mean, speak to the heart about this issue. If you really believe it, speak from the heart about it. But it's 7 minutes. 7 minutes that you could speak from the heart. You don't have to read the same speech 2 days in a row. But Mr. Speaker, release the information. Make sure that we all have every bit of information that cabinet had at the time that it made this decision, and pulled the rug out from not only people in Yarmouth, but people across Nova Scotia who are relying on this. You know, we know the economy is down, and everybody expected the numbers on the ferry services to be down at a time of bad economy, just like tourism numbers are down all over. But the fact is, now this is one more blow, and we're already seeing the closures. We're already seeing the staff not being called back. This is a massive impact to these communities. And if it wasn't an impact, you wouldn't see councils across Nova Scotia, municipal governments that are arguably closest to the people, passing motions against the government. Mr. Speaker, I certainly appreciate the time the House has afforded me today to discuss this, and I'll take my place.
Thank you. The time allotted for debate on resolution number 4 has now expired. The Honourable, the House Leader of the Official Opposition.
How soon we forget, Mr. Speaker. There, you know.
I had government leader.
This completes the opposition day's business today. I turn it back to the government House Leader.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the Honourable the Government House Leader.
That's a loaded statement, Mr. Speaker. Turn it back on him. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, we wish you to now rise, and the House will meet from the hours of 12 noon to 4 p.m. And after the daily routine and question period, if time permits, we will do address and reply. So I wish you now rise to meet again tomorrow at the hour.
Thank you. The motion before the House is for the House to rise and meet again tomorrow at 12 noon. Is the House ready for the question? Question has been called. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye. Those against, motion carried. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow. We have now arrived at the moment of interruption. Tonight's late show was submitted by the honourable member from Lunenburg West. Therefore, be resolved that the House of Assembly recognize the vital importance of childcare organizations such as the Lunenburg Daycare Centre and the By the Sea Nursery, recent recipients of funding through the Childcare Centre Repair Fund.